now people, wherever they are, whenever they can, will hopefully get onto this. And I'm going to share my screen and let's get started. So let's share here we go.
Oopsie, I goofed up here.
What happened?
Different thing.
That's not what we got.
When you say that's not what you got,
That was not what was attached to the email, which, to be honest, makes me feel a whole lot better.
I don't know what was attached to an email for Lunch and Learn.
I
For
didn't
Torah
get
for today.
anything. I didn't get anything attached.
And there was an attachment,
Yeah.
but I will show it to you. And I actually had just said to Bob that reading it, not only were there a lot of typos, but it wasn't the type of learning that I'm accustomed to from you, Rabbi. So what I'm seeing on the screen is much more relevant to
Who
you.
sent you an attachment?
Kirby, when she sent us the email about today.
Did anybody else get an attachment?
I didn't notice.
No.
I didn't pay attention.
See?
Will you forward me at some point, Miriam, whatever was sent to
Okay.
you? Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Let's begin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvot b'divrei Torah. Okay. So what I want to do with us today is take a look at two verses. They are actually the two more common verses that are discussed when we look at the Torah portion of Truma. And the reason these two verses are the ones that are most likely discussed is because for those of you who are not as familiar with Parshat Truma as others, it's basically very, very specific details about the building of the tabernacle in the wilderness. And there's actually two parshiot, this one Truma, and next week's Tetzaveh, that go into incredibly picayune details of the construction of all of the parts of the tabernacle and measurements of the tabernacle and whatnot. So instead of us focusing on those details, what I want to focus on is the opening couple of verses. And then when we get through that,
Rabbi, I see what happened. I just looked at the email. The attachment was, I believe, the Drash or the Dvar Torah that Kirby asked me to send again so she can open it.
oh, but that wasn't for the Torah for today.
I know, but
That was for the Musar class.
Correct, but that was attached to the Torah of today for today.
I just forwarded it to you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Yeah, now I get it. You're right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I thought somehow in my preparation, I may have to okay, well, let's go through this. I may have to go back and add a verse that I thought I had put in, but let's jump in. All right, so Parshat Truma opens with the verse. God spoke to Moses saying, tell the Israelite people to take gifts for me. You shall accept gifts for me from every person whose heart so moves him. Okay, so that's the opening of the Torah portion. So before we jump into the sources, let's just take a look at that verse and ask any questions that you might have that provoke you, that interest you, that excite you, that challenge you on the verse or the verses.
Right, Rabbi, can
Rob.
you enlarge, please?
Say that again.
Can you enlarge, please?
I
I
couldn't,
can't read it. Thank you.
hold on. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Rob, what do you got?
Why does God need gifts from us? God, I don't understand the need to give gifts unless this is a form of sacrifice that that the Israelites are being asked for. It just seems nonsensical to me.
What a great way to begin. A great way to begin. Yes, if God could bring the plagues to bear on Egypt, if God could separate the sea and destroy all of the Egyptians, why is it necessary, as Rob so eloquently stated, to have God say to Moses, to say to the children of Israel, collect things, right? It makes no sense. God could build a Mishkan. God could help with Moshe building the Mishkan. There needs to be no contributions in this way. So the hands that just popped up, are those hands in response to the question that Rob is offering, or are these other things that you see potentially in the verse?
That,
Both.
Both. Okay, Anita, go ahead.
Um, it God is asking that people take part, become participants in the process. And by donating, by this move of charity, it's a way for the people to become participants instead of an audience to God's power.
Okay, so Rob, what I'm hearing Anita say is it's true. God doesn't need them to participate, but God wants them to participate because thus far the Israelites have had to do very little, if anything, to participate in their redemption. What did the Israelites have to do thus far to participate in the redemption?
Leave.
They had to leave.
They had to leave Egypt, which, by the way, according to the tradition, most of the Israelites didn't leave Egypt. They stayed in Egypt. Only a fifth left Egypt. And they had to do a little bit more. They had to take, if you remember, a lamb, slaughter it, and put blood on the doorposts of their house. But very, very little. And so what Anita is suggesting, Rob, and everybody else, is for the Israelites to begin to feel that they are more than just audience members, but actual participants in their fate and in their future. This might be a first step for them.
Yeah.
Rob, in response.
In response, the God we believe in is incorporeal. How do we transmit a corporeal gift to an incorporeal force being?
What a great question. So does God really need these things? Does God need the smell of the ashes that are burnt on the offering? Or is this another way of describing something that cannot simply be described easily, right? It's a fantastic question. Mort, go ahead. I saw your hand up earlier.
Yeah, well, from a historical perspective, the Israelites came from a society with idols. This is what you would expect a God whose example is exemplified by an idol would request. So I think for the Israelites to relate to God, the Israelite God, they have to make a connection to their past. And that's why it's framed this way.
Okay, so this is a stage in the religious development, the psychological and emotional development of the children of Israel. You can't expect people who are living in a society that is filled with physical idolatrous actions to remove themselves from that world completely and accept a world in which there is a God who, as you said, Rob, is incorporeal, who can't be seen, who can't be felt, who can't be touched. That's just too religiously, emotionally, and psychologically too radical a move to go from one place to another place without going through baby steps. And according to Mort, this is one of those baby steps that allows the Israelites to move along that arc. Great. George, and then Stan, and then Miriam.
Well, first of all, it says the yikhu, take. In other words, it doesn't say give. The Hebrew is take. And the concept is if you give terumah, you actually get more. You take. You're not giving. In other words, I'm giving charity, but I'm going to receive more than I'm giving.
So how does that answer Rob's question, George?
I don't know. I wasn't listening that much.
So then I'm not sure.
The whole thing is the verb lakachat, to take rather than to give.
Well,
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. So
despite the fact that you weren't listening to your fellow classmates,
well, I missed some of it.
I will suggest that in your response is an answer to Rob's question.
Okay, well, good. That's good.
And
we're answering the question. That's
and
good.
the answer that George is unintentionally giving to you, Rob, in your excellent question is that when we participate in the building of the Mishkan, maybe this is what God is thinking, we will have a greater stake in it. As opposed to it being done for us, where we might then take it for granted or ignore it. By giving something that is ours, that is of value, up for the building of the Mishkan, we're in fact gaining something even greater than whatever it is that we gave. That's what George is hinting at through the language, that what we're gaining is a sense of ownership and pride and responsibility for what it is that we're building, because we've built it, as opposed to allowing God to do the work for us. And I think what George was extending in his comment is that we could move that beyond just the tabernacle. In general, do we feel when we give tzedakah that we gain something back? Do we get something in return? And George is suggesting that yes, in fact, we do. That when we help other people,
good things will happen, allegedly, all that.
Well, I don't know if good things will happen or not, but what I think what you're saying first is that when we help other people, there is something that we gain in return.
We're taking. We're taking. We're not just giving, we're taking.
What are we taking? What are we taking, George?
Well, I mean, some of the comments later.
No, I don't want comments. Just when you say we're taking, when you give, what is it that you are taking in your act of giving?
Okay, besides the rewards in the next world, so to speak, we're actually, the concept is that we're not really we're going to get more back than we're putting out. That's the concept. We are actually, this is to our benefit, both financially and emotionally and, all the other dimensions.
Okay, great. Stan.
Well, firstly, the history of giving gifts to God goes back to Cain and Abel. So it's not the first time that we learn about giving gifts to God.
Well, I don't know.
Of course, in the anthropomorphic God that we have in the Torah described. Anytime we ask about, how can we relate in any way to God, we're, asking a question that we've created ourselves by having this anthropomorphic God of the Torah. And what this verse is saying, though, it's more than accept gifts. It's for those whose heart moves them. That we're talking something about the emotional aspect of it's not a requirement. It's something that we should strive within ourselves to, to feel this responsibility or urge or whatever it is in some kind of a relationship that more or less we have invented.
Good. Excellent. Okay, so here's a whole other level. In terms of Stan's response, what he's suggesting is if we're not moved, we don't have to participate. But if we are moved, then participating is a concrete way of expressing the emotions that we have towards God and towards the building of the Mishkan. And sometimes doing concrete acts solidifies the feelings that we have. And this is an example of one of the ways in which God is inviting us to concretize our emotions. Great. Excellent. Love that. Miriam and then Leora.
I think that Anita had said it at the beginning, and just a word, though, that had not been used is invest. When we give gifts, we become invested in whatever it is. So if we help invest in the building of the Mishkan becomes part of us. And it's similar to when we started building the building on Valley Circle, where all of the members of what was then Shomrei Torah had been asked to participate at whatever level that they could participate in the building fund. So that when people walk into that building, it's our building. We become invested in it. And I think that's the same in this case.
Right. Excellent. Love it. Love it. Leora.
I just want to add that this is not a command. That God is not commanding us to do anything. He said, do what your heart tells you to do. So here is the range, but do what if you want to.
Very good. In other words, focusing on the Yidavenu Libo, that if your heart moves you, then you give. If your heart doesn't move you, then you're not going to participate. And if you're not going to participate, that's okay. You don't have to, because it's not a command. It's a voluntary offering. Well, let's see what the commentators say, right? So the first commentator, which I don't know where it came from, so I can't tell you who it is, which is why I wrote source unknown, suggests with regard to tzedakah, the one who gives is the recipient. More than he gives, he receives. So this is exactly what George was saying earlier. This source is playing on that verb vayikhu instead of vayinu. Vayinu means and you shall give. Vayikhu means and you shall take. So this source is commenting on the unusual choice of language in the Bible. Why would it say the children of Israel shall take from me instead of the children of Israel forgive for me? Because one who gives tzedakah actually receives. When we give tzedakah, we are not directing it to another, but to ourselves. Interesting. I want us to hold on to that idea. When we give tzedakah, we are not directing it to another, but to ourselves. Then he gives an example, a tithe. so that you will increase in wealth. Kedei shetit aser. This is also suggested in the Mishnah. If the poor person stretches his hand within and places an article into the hand of the householder, the one who receives is the householder, and it is by virtue of his tzedakah that he lives, receiving from the poor person. So I want to ask you, first of all, do you agree with this, the way in which it's articulated, that when you give to tzedakah, you're actually getting something yourself? And do you agree that what you're getting is more than what it is that you are giving?
Sure. That's right. Yeah, I agree with that.
Tell me, go ahead, Mort.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you get, or what I get, is this psychological sense of that I'm doing something that's worthwhile, that I'm getting in touch with my humanity. I think what you get is an emotional high.
So in other words, what you're saying, Mort, is that it reminds you when you give that you are not a selfish individual, that you are a person who cares deeply about the needs of others. And the act of giving for you is a reminder that you have the capacity to see the needs of others and not necessarily selfishly only yourself.
Yeah, very, very satisfying psychologically.
Leora? Right, Leora, you're muted.
As I'm listening to the answer, something came to me is that when I give, it's not only that I'm helping the poor, it's looking inside myself and see how blessed am I that I don't need to get from anyone.
So really nice. So in other words, when you give to another person, you have to explore your own internal motivations. And in the act of giving, you come to the realization that you have plenty, that you are blessed. And what you gain from giving is the understanding that you are living a life that is filled with gratitude, because you have what you need, and you are therefore able to give some of what you have to others so that they can feel the same kind of satisfaction in life and contentment that you feel. Beautiful, beautiful. Anita, and then Stan.
I am also honoring my parents and my heritage. I was taught by my parents that you give all the time, that you give. When you get money, you give money. And I think it was part of our Jewish heritage, maybe coming right from this parsha, that is part of us. It's our makeup to be giving. And so I think it's just acknowledging who I am.
Nice. So Anita adds a whole other layer, and that is what we take, meaning what we get back from our giving, is a deeper connection to who we are, to our identity. We connect our act of giving to our heritage, to our background, to the lessons that we might have learned from those who came before us, and therefore keep the memory of those people and those values alive. These are all terrific answers. Nancy.
I agree with everybody, and but on the other hand, you would hope that the person you're helping out would appreciate it as much as the satisfaction that you get yourself from doing it. There's that aspect too, you know.
That is 100% true. And yet at the end of the day, Nancy, if you give, and this is for everybody, if you give and you get nothing back from the other person, in other words, no sense of appreciation, does that stop you from giving again?
Oh, no, never.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, you're not doing it in order to gain the appreciation of another person. You're doing it because you know internally that this is how you define who you are as a moral and ethical human being. And it's always nice to get that appreciation, but it's not going to stop us from doing the right thing, even if we don't get the accolades coming back to us.
Yeah, of course.
Stan and then Rob.
Well, certainly we give tzedakah, or whatever we want to call it, based on our tradition and to institutions or people that we value, that represent our values, and that's the reason that we're doing it. It's part of our, it's a commandment, but it's actually part of the tradition. But the thing is that again, in this Torah portion, we're describing it as more rather than less. Less and more are things in the physical world. They're not things that are in a spiritual or esoteric or other world. So we're trying to describe something that really we don't have the words for, because we've kind of created this story. And we have to have some way of telling the story. But the more and the less really, to me, don't make sense.
Okay, I no argument there. No argument. Rob.
I find there's a different sort of satisfaction that I get when I give money to a cause, as opposed to volunteering my time and effort to a cause. When I give money, I'm always a little bit skeptical as to how much help that money is really going. And I'm talking about giving money to an organization. Whereas if I do the volunteer work that I do, when I do it, I know that I'm helping people specifically, and I get a much more satisfactory feeling, and I don't want to, it's overstating it to say a holy feeling, but I'm getting a much more profound feeling of gratitude for having done that work than I do when I just give money.
So I think the word holy is
very
good.
nice.
I think it's actually a good word, holy. And I know you both, imply WHOLLY and HOLY. So I think it was a great choice of words. And I would imagine, Rob, that most people feel the same. There's something particularly rewarding about rolling up your hand, your sleeves, and digging into the kind of meaningful, laborious work. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't also give in terms of financial means. It's not an either or. In fact, it's a both, that there are many ways in which we can participate in healing the world and helping those who are in need. Miriam, and then we're going to jump, after Miriam's comment, we'll jump to the next text.
When we give money to an organization, we're removed. We don't see the actual rewards of that money, where it exactly goes. But when you volunteer, you can see where it's helping right then. Now, again, one doesn't preclude the other. We certainly give both. But I had been pretty sick and unable to help out, and I've always been a doer and a volunteer at the synagogue, and I had been unable to do that for a while. And at the membership event that the synagogue put on, I was feeling really good and I was able to help out. And I was at the membership desk, the greeting desk all day. And there was such a feeling of joy and contentment and holiness, I guess, Rob, being able to do that. I feel sorry for people who don't get that feeling.
Mhm. Yeah, that's why I love the term that Rob used, holy, because I think it really does express so beautifully the work of volunteering and giving. So, all right, let's move on. What does Rabbi Yoel Baranchik offer us? He suggests the following. The Torah expressed this process of giving to the construction of the Mishkan in the idiom of giving. This is to teach us that the one who gives must feel in himself at the moment of donation just the same as the one who receives when he takes it into his hand. So there is a really profound psychological insight in this comment, and I want us to explore for a little bit. What do you think he means? I want to read it again to you. This is to teach that the one who gives must feel in himself at the moment of the donation. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. Just the same as the one who receives when he takes it into his hand. So this is a particular instruction to the giver of how to properly give. What do you think about this? Yeah, Anita.
My thought is the word empathy. That at that moment, you're at one with the other person.
Now, empathy implies that you know how it feels to stand in the shoes of the other individual. So what happens, Anita, if you don't know what it feels like to stand in the shoes of the other person?
Again, I think because of our heritage, we can consider that we are standing in the other person's shoes. I may not have physically experienced a particular thing, but I've been sick. So knowing that the other person is ill, I can understand that. Or understanding that they don't have. There have been times in my life I didn't have.
I love your first comment. I mean, like everything that you said, but your first comment in particular is really, it's really magnificent, because what you're saying is that sometimes the way that empathy can work is if I can remove my individual self from the moment and see myself as part of a collective. Like, I am a Jew, and as a Jew, I am part of a people who have suffered terribly, who have been in a position where they have needed to beg for their next bite of food. And the empathy that maybe Anita is suggesting is an empathy that goes beyond my own individual experiences, but that connects me to my peoplehood, my history. And in that sense, how can I not but feel the deep needs that the other person is experiencing, and the humility and the shame and the vulnerability and all those other things in the act of giving? Terrific. George.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but I know that Rambam discussed different levels of charity. And I think higher levels when the donor doesn't know the recipient. Of course, putting a person being able to get a job and succeed on his own is the highest, but handing somebody money isn't as high as he or she doesn't know you and you don't know that person.
So, George, if you were to take that understanding, that lesson of Maimonides, and apply it to the statement that Rabbi Baranchik states,
Right.
when he says, this is to teach that the one who gives must feel in himself at the moment of donation, just the same as the one who receives. So if you don't know who you're giving it to,
right,
how do you go about fulfilling this Musar teaching?
Okay, well, I may feel good. I'm giving to a cause which, helps whatever, fire victims, Israel, you name it, a good cause. But I
He's
don't
not
know.
asking you to feel good. He's asking you to feel the same as the
Okay.
one who's receiving
I
it.
don't know what the other person or group is feeling. I know what I might be feeling, I mean,
Okay. So very interesting. So in other words, you can't ever really know
no,
what another person is feeling.
you probably shouldn't if you don't know who the person is, because you don't want them to be obligated, like, you know what I mean? It's better if they don't know who it's from or
But so what you're suggesting is, while I can't feel what the other person is feeling, I could imagine myself in a situation that the other person is in.
Okay.
And that goes back to what Anita was saying earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Stan, and then Eileen.
Well, one of the ways I lead my life is to count my blessings every day. And I count among those blessings the ability to give to the causes that I believe in. So I'm blessed. Now, it may not be exactly what you're referring to in the Torah portion here, but to me, it's part of the expression of being able to do it, to get the feeling of I look how blessed I am in many ways, but certainly in that way.
Okay, but Stan, I don't know while I certainly agree with what you're saying, I don't know if that's necessarily
That's not what they're saying.
what Rabbi Yoel is asking, because what Rabbi Yoel is imagining is that the person who's receiving it may or may not be feeling the blessings of life. When you're giving, you do feel your blessings, which is why you're able to give. Here, he's inviting us to not think about our blessings, but to think about our lack,
Action.
right? Our lack. Like when I receive something from another person, what does that make me feel? Like when all of you have been in a situation where you have needed, where you have been on the receiving end of somebody else's blessings,
Yeah.
how does that make you feel? Like, what are the emotions that you experience in a moment in which you need to receive another person's gift? Nancy, Leora, Rob, and Steve.
It makes you feel, if you're right there physically, it makes you feel more gratitude, than if you received a mail donation or something like that. But unless you're physically, volunteering and you're seen like at the Purim Carnival or something like that, and you have more satisfaction, and somebody said to me, and it really got me to thinking, I give to a certain charity, and they said to me, do you know how much the CEO of that company? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, like it really makes you wonder how much actually goes to the, cause or the whatever the person you're donating to. So when I made out my will, I said for my donations, not for administrative costs, because I never really thought about that before, but you really wonder, but unless you're doing something physically that you're seeing that another person is receiving your donation time or your, physical, whatever, you don't really know, but you would hope.
True. Absolutely. Absolutely. Good. Who did I call on next? Now I forgot. I think it was Eileen.
I already forgot what I wanted to say,
So
but
the question was, when you're on the receiving end of somebody else's goodness to you, how does that make you feel?
it makes you feel grateful. You appreciate it. And sometimes you think there has to be some way that I can reciprocate somehow. Doesn't
Ah.
always have to be money, but there could be another way. But it always makes you feel that somebody cared about you. But when I have to give to somebody who is, let's say, homeless, the only thought that comes to me is, and thank God it's not me.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I think that's what everybody thinks when you see people that are homeless or sitting outside a supermarket with a baby saying, "Give me money for diapers."
Yeah.
You're thankful that it's not you or your family.
In other words, but for the grace of God, I could be in that position.
Right.
And I think the first comment that you made is also one that is compelling to many of us. When we receive gifts of kindness and help from other people, immediately there's a response of wanting to do something in return, of wanting to give back, of wanting to be on the giving end now that we've been on the receiving end. Because I think there's a certain vulnerability that we experience when we have to be on the receiving end. And nobody loves to be in a state of vulnerability. That's not an easy place for human beings to be in a state of vulnerability. So if we can turn it around and give to other people, that realigns that sense of need and vulnerability and turns it into, right, a sense of I can be a fully contributing member of society. Thank you, Eileen. I think that's really good. Steve.
Well, I think back on when I worked for a living and my professional role, one of the things that I learned that I thought helped make me successful was I was able to put myself in the other's place. And I think that concept of imagining yourself in the other's place can lead to success professionally, which it did in my case. I was able to think about what are they thinking? How should I explain this concept or this approach or and I think it relates very, very well to a situation where you look at a poor person, you put yourself in their place and donate and give because you understand that they're suffering.
Very nice. Exactly. Again, that notion of how do we, instigate the capacity to be empathetic
Right.
to those who are in situations that we imagine they didn't choose for themselves. George, and then Mort.
Okay, going back in history, somebody who was down on his or her luck, may have needed charity, and all of that. But and not taking a political position, believe me, one way or the other, I don't want to get started, but the welfare state, where the state gives people, there often is a sense of entitlement, that I have this coming to me, other people owe it to me. It's not that they're generous, it's, and I want more, you know what I'm saying? It's a different frame of mind. Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think we're all with you on that. Mort, and then I think I see Miriam and Leora.
I just want to share an experience I had that I think is so relevant. When I first moved out here, I was an attorney who was admitted in New York, but not here. So I needed a position. And I said, you know what? Insurance companies always need attorneys, adjusters. And I said, where are insurance companies? I asked my brother-in-law, and he said, well, you have the Tishman high rises on Mid-Wilshire or something. So I printed up a bunch of resumes, and I looked at, and I would go to a building and look up to see if there's an insurance company. And then I would go up and there would be a receptionist, and I'd say, my name is Morton Shatskin. I'm an attorney from New York, and I'd like a position. Here's my resume. And I'd hand it to the receptionist. The receptionist would say, thank you. Okay. So I'm here 1 week, and I'm doing this, and I'm up at an insurance company and giving my spiel. And the gal says, thank you. She takes it, and I'm about to leave. And there's a man who was standing there when I was giving my spiel. And he said, you know what? He says, just sit down, wait a minute. So I sit down, and then he takes me in the office, and there's a man behind the desk. And he says, my name is Mr. Campenzano. I'm the supervisor of Mercury Insurance Company. He said, you're a Jew from Brooklyn. He says, I'm a Catholic from Brooklyn. He says, I think people are on this earth to do more than earn a day's pay. He says, I don't have an opening, but let me see what I can do for you. And he gets on the telephone and starts calling insurance company supervisors and says, I got a nice young man here. He needs blah, 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 blah. And in 1 week, I was earning more money with Continental Insurance Company as an adjuster with the car than they were willing to pay me as an attorney back in New York in those years. So there's a holy man. What, and that instilled in me that if you can help somebody, you help somebody. That was an amazing experience.
Wow, that's amazing. How many years ago did that happen, Mort?
Well, I moved out here in October of 65.
Wow. That's amazing.
So
60
by the
years ago, and it's
second
as if
year,
you're telling the story that it happened yesterday.
And I never saw the man again. I wrote him a thank you. Never met him again. Never saw him.
Wow. You know, I love that moment in the Bible when Joseph is going to visit his brothers in the valley, and he doesn't know where they are, and he comes upon this man from Dothan, and it's just a random fellow in the Bible you never see again. And yet it was that man that led Joseph to his brothers, which led to his being sold into slavery, which led to his brothers ultimately being saved by the famine and going down to Egypt. So one person in life has the potential to completely change the trajectory of another individual. And that's the example that Mort gave. And the question that he poses to all of us is, where in our life have we been that individual to change the trajectory in a positive way of another human being through our actions and our deeds? So great. Who was it that I called on? I think, oh, Miriam. Yes. And then Leora.
My life changed approximately 14 months ago when I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So all of a sudden, I became a different person, and my needs were very different. I was not one ever to be happy to be given things. I didn't want to be the needy one. And it was very hard for me when a meal train was set up for me to accept it. And it took me a while, and I did, and it was unbelievable. Going back to what the original question was, the feeling of gratitude, of people bringing Bob and I food. One person brought me food 2 or 3 times who I had never before met. I had never met her. And then you do want to see what you can do to give back. And months later, this woman's mother passed away, and I went to her house for Shiva Minyan. I didn't know who she was. And I had to ask for her. And I could hear people going, she doesn't even know who this person is that she's here for. But she knew, and there was a hug and a kiss. There was just that connection. So there's the both feelings of the gratitude of accepting it, as well as wanting to give back. And I have a friend who did bring us food. And then a few months later, her husband was diagnosed with cancer and they needed help, and she was unwilling to take it. And I said to her, how did you feel when you brought Bob and I dinner? And she said, oh, it gave me such a good feeling. And I said, and why are you taking that feeling away from us?
Right.
Please let us give it to you.
That's lovely.
Well. So it's funny how you live your life for 70 some years and then something happens and you see things totally different. So
That last comment, I just want to hold, I just want us to hold on to that last comment, because by acting in a way that says to others, I don't need your support, I don't need your help, I can do this all on my own, you're actually denying them
Right.
the ability
Right.
to do a mitzvah.
Right.
You're taking away from them
Right.
the opportunity for them,
Mhm.
which they need in their heart, to do good for somebody else.
Mhm.
And so what this passage may help us think about, like the way that Miriam just framed it, is like to do for somebody else, right, is a gift for them, not in the act of giving, but that it's like they're allowing you to see a side of your humanity that you may not have seen except through this act of giving. Very nice. It was Leora and then Anita.
I really appreciate what Miriam had to say, because I'm the kind who don't like to receive. And when I do give, I try to give it anonymously. It's just, basetel, so people won't know. I think for me, it would be very humiliating to receive.
Why?
Because you become a needy person that needs others to support you. I mean, it's, I think it's shame, probably shame.
Well, and then again, like, from Miriam's perspective, it's the opposite.
Right.
Right? If I'm in a position where I am in need,
yeah,
instead of feeling shame, what I'm doing is I'm saying, I'm giving you the opportunity to do an act of chesed.
Sure.
Right? I am allowing you to fulfill your duty to be a moral, kind, giving human being. What a gift that is for me, that I can give you that.
Thank you, Miriam. That was big. Thank you.
Anita.
I'm with Leora. I would feel deep shame, and that I was in a position to need that charity. It would be a very big hurt. And I just, because of what Miriam just said, I played back a moment in my life where the person who did it, he said, my mother just went into an assisted living, and I have all the furniture in that house, and I have to get it out of the house because I have to sell that house in order to pay for her residential care. I've got to get this furniture out. Can you store the furniture in your apartment? I had no furniture.
That's beautiful.
And I had, suddenly I had a couch and a bed and everything I needed. And so, but that was framed in a way that was very different than I'm giving you $20 to go buy a meal. I could never have done that.
Yeah, it's so beautiful the way he framed that he needed you to do the mitzvah of taking his furniture, when in reality, right, he was doing the mitzvah to give you the furniture because you had nothing. That's beautiful. That really is beautiful. I mean, this whole conversation is one that I think is so rich because, like, we can't make assumptions about other people. And it's not fair to put ourselves in a position where we shouldn't accept the kindness and goodness of other people. Because when we accept the goodness and kindness of other people, we are ourselves facilitating mitzvot. And why should we be the ones to stop other people from doing mitzvahs? Right? That's not our job to do that. So to be able to put ourselves in the position of the person in need and to be in need and to help the person who's helping us, elevate them. That's really the beauty of this discussion. So as always, I always step away from this class feeling like enriched by your comments and am grateful to all of you for the wisdom that you bring to our discussion. So
I'd like to add just a little something.
Of course.
The couple became my son's godparents.
Oh.
And in their age stage of life, when they became in need, we felt that they were our grandparents or our parents and my son's grandparents, and actually helped him in his last moments.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. The cycle. That's really nice. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing such beautiful stories today, and for turning this discussion into such richness. So I will see you all, I think, next week as well. And let's continue our learning together.
Thank you.
you.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.